If anybody is still coming in to join us, please join. We have some great presenters. Come on in. Yeah, right. So you get. Yep. We're waiting. I will deal with Kim Baldwin later. Everyone's here? Ready? Ready for the MPA session to start. Everyone come on in. It's good to see a crowd. This is one of the best sessions at GCFI. I believe so. Yes. That's okay. Okay, come on in everybody. Welcome to the best session at GCFI on MPAs. Yeah, can we get that? Never. All right, excellent. Come on in everybody. We are running a little bit late now, but I hope we've got a really good drone shot. That's exciting. We have 6 speakers in this session. The first 2 speakers are speaking in French. So, if you need translation, please, those English speakers who need translation from French, please go into your app and set up your translation. So we have 6 speakers. They are coming first. Our first speaker is from Guadeloupe. We then have a speaker from Martinique. We're then going to Seaflower in Colombia. Then we have a regional presentation. Then we go to Grenada, and we're going to finish up in the Bahamas. Okay? We have 15-minute talks, 13 minutes of speaking and 2 minutes for questions. Let's see if we make up any time. I would like to warmly welcome everybody. You're all an important part of the GCFI family, and we have a number of marine protected area networks in the region, and you're all part of the MPA networking family also. It is great to see you. I am very curious, are you an MPA manager in the crowd? Are you an MPA manager? Please give us a wave. How many MPA managers are here? Excellent. Okay, excellent. And some more here. Very good. Who else works with marine protected areas in some way? Partners of MPAs, sites? Excellent. All right. Thank you very much. You all have a hard job in MPA management, and it's great to share. All right. Let's come on in, and if we can quieten down. Our very first speaker, we're very pleased to have from the island of beautiful Guadeloupe, Simone Mej, who works with the Parc National de Guadeloupe, is our first speaker. She's going to be speaking to us about some very interesting research that she's done that relates to sea urchins in protected areas, Trypnustes ventricosus, the white sea urchin. So, are we ready with the presentation? Are we ready with translation?
We're ready with translation.
Has everyone got their translation as needed? All right. Simone.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for joining, though. I should introduce myself properly. Anyone, in case you don't know me, my name is Emma Doyle. I coordinate the MPA Connect network of Caribbean MPAs. That's a partnership between GCFI with NOAA's Coral Program and with a network of now 40 marine protected areas in 18 Caribbean countries and territories. We work closely with some of the other networks in the region, such as our friends from SPOR RAC from here on Guadeloupe and other networks that exist in the region. And we work on capacity building and networking for coral reef MPAs. So it's great to have you all as part of our MPA family. Nearly ready? So as I said before, we have 6 speakers today. We're starting in Guadeloupe, then we go to Martinique, then we go to Seaflower in Colombia, in San Andres. We have a regional presentation, then some new research from Grenada, and some fantastic wrap-up from the Bahamas. Okay, we're taking in sharks as well. All right, ready, Simone? Ready? Okay, so I'll hand over to Simone.
Alors, bonsoir, good afternoon, buenas tardes, and messieurs et dames, bien bonsoir. My name is Simone Mej, and I have been working in the National Park of Guadeloupe. For my presentation, I prefer to speak in French because my English is very bad. Alors, ma présentation porte sur une étude de l'estimation de l'abondance des oursins blancs et des oursins verts dans les herbiers, alors Trypnust ventricosus et Litechinus variegatus, dans les herbiers de Phanerogame marine de Guadeloupe. Et cette étude a été réalisée par le personnel du Parc national de la Guadeloupe. Right. OK. Donc, je vais tout d'abord vous présenter le Parc national de la Guadeloupe. Donc, le Parc national a été créé en 1989. Il est composé de 3 entités. On a une zone de cœur multipolaire. Donc, ce sont les zones qui sont en vert foncé. Les espaces qui sont classés en cœur sont des zones de protection maximale. Elles sont en partie donc situées dans la baie du Grand Cul-de-Sac marin, au nord de la Basse-Terre, sur la façade Caraïbe avec les îlets Pigeons, et on a le massif forestier sur la Basse-Terre. Donc les cœurs sont des espaces de protection et de référence scientifique permettant de suivre l'évolution des successions naturelles. La deuxième entité est l'aire d'adhésion, et en fait l'aire d'adhésion, elle est définie en fonction de la libre adhésion des communes à la charte du territoire. Alors la charte du territoire, en fait, définit des orientations et des mesures que les acteurs de ces espaces s'engagent à mettre en œuvre en faveur d'un développement durable. Donc la Guadeloupe compte 32 communes, 20 communes ont signé la charte du territoire et 10 sont concernées par la partie marine. Et l'aire d'adhésion a une superficie de 94 000 hectares. Et enfin, donc les espaces qui sont classés, l'ensemble des espaces marins et des espaces terrestres qui sont classés en cœur de parc sont inclus dans une vaste aire maritime adjacente. Donc c'est toute la partie bleue hachurée. Et cette aire maritime adjacente donc, a une superficie de 130 000 hectares et elle recouvre au nord la totalité de la baie du Grand Cul-de-Sac marin et elle s'étend jusqu'à l'ouest, jusqu'aux limites des eaux territoriales pour prendre en compte des reliefs sous-marins en faveur des cétacés. Donc le parc national couvre des espaces protégés parmi les plus emblématiques de la Guadeloupe, à savoir les mangroves, les herbiers de Phanerogame marine, les récifs coralliens, les forêts marécageuses et les forêts tropicales. Alors, l'étude sur les oursins a démarré en 2007. Donc, pour commencer, un rappel sur la biologie de ces espèces. Donc, pour l'oursin blanc, l'habitat de prédilection de l'oursin blanc est constitué par des herbiers de Phanerogame marine, principalement à Thalassia testudinum et Syringodium filiforme. et occasionnellement les récifs coralliens envahis par les macroalgues. L'oursin vert, lui, vit essentiellement dans les herbiers de Phanerogame marine à Thalassia testudinum. Ils se nourrissent d'algues et de feuilles de Phanerogame marine. En ce qui concerne la reproduction de l'oursin blanc, au cours d'une année, on a 2 pontes qui sont observées, une en saison sèche et une en saison humide. Et cette espèce présente un comportement agrégatif. Donc l'agrégation des individus permet d'améliorer le succès reproductif. Quant à l'oursin vert, il se reproduit sur une période qui s'étale de mars à octobre. La maturité sexuelle pour l'oursin blanc est lorsque le test de son diamètre a atteint 6,5 cm et l'oursin vert 4 cm. Donc, seul l'oursin blanc est consommé aux Antilles, mais sa pêche est réglementée. En fait, elle est réservée aux pêcheurs professionnels détenant une autorisation annuelle et elle est interdite à la pêche de loisirs. Alors, 2 sites sont localisés. En fait, cette étude a porté sur 3 sites. Donc, on a 2 sites qui sont localisés en cœur de parc. On a le site de Fajou, qui est composé d'un herbier mixte à Thalassia testudinum et Syringodium filiforme. On a le site de la Passacola, qui est composé d'un herbier mixte également à Thalassia testudinum et Syringodium filiforme, avec une dominance pour les plants de Thalassia, et une partie de cette station est composée uniquement de Thalassia testudinum. Donc ces 2 premières stations bénéficient d'un statut de protection totale. Le 3e site, donc c'est l'herbier du sud de Carrette, est quant à lui dans une zone soumise à la pêche et il est en aire maritime adjacente. Donc en fait, nous menons des suivis dans des zones protégées et des zones non protégées afin de pouvoir faire des comparaisons et d'évaluer un éventuel effet réserve. Alors, chacun de ces sites est équipé de 3 radiales. De 3 radiales pérennes de 50 mètres. À chacune de ces radiales, donc, on a un décamètre de 50 mètres qui est déroulé. Les radiales sont matérialisées par des bornes de géomètre qui sont espacées tous les 12,5 mètres afin de repositionner le décamètre au retour sur site lors de l'échantillonnage. Ensuite, on a donc 2 plongeurs. Les plongeurs, en fait, sont répartis de chaque côté de la radiale. Et chaque plongeur pousse devant lui une tige de 1 mètre et, le long de la radiale, et il recense tous les animaux interceptés par la tige le long de la radiale de 50 mètres. Donc l'abondance numérique de ces animaux a été déterminée par comptage à l'intérieur de bandes transects. Seule la taille des oursins blancs a été prise en compte, car celle-ci fait l'objet d'une exploitation commerciale, ce qui n'est pas le cas de l'oursin vert. Et l'effort d'échantillonnage est donc de 300 mètres carrés. Alors, quelques résultats. Donc, pour l'oursin blanc, on voit que l'analyse de ces courbes montre un effet réserve pour l'abondance des oursins blancs pour les 2 sites localisés en zone classée en cœur de parc. Donc, les zones classées en cœur de parc, on a le site de Fajou en bleu et le site de Passacola en rouge. En revanche, on voit que les oursins sont pratiquement complètement absents sur le site de Carrette, qui est hors cœur de parc. Et selon les années, on observe une grande variabilité de l'abondance des oursins. Cependant, en 2024, pour le site de Fajou et le site de la Passacola, depuis 2016-2017, l'abondance numérique des oursins blancs diminue de façon notable, et ce jusqu'en 2024. En 2024, pour le site de Fajou, on a noté une perte de 98%, pour le site de la Passacola et de Carrette, 100%. Pour ce qui est des oursins verts, donc l'analyse de ces courbes montre une abondance numérique très importante pour le site de la Passacola, qui est en cœur de parc. Ensuite, on a une abondance numérique plus importante pour le site de Fajou, toujours en cœur de parc, par rapport à Carrette, qui est hors cœur de parc. Donc, l'oursin vert vit essentiellement dans les herbiers de Phanerogame marine à Thalassia testudinum. Donc, son régime alimentaire pourrait expliquer son abondance pour le site de la Passacola, compte tenu du fait que sur les 3 radiales de la Passacola, 2 sont composés de Thalassia, sont composés par un herbier mixte à Thalassia testudinum et Syringodium filiforme, avec un nombre de plants plus élevé pour Thalassia, et la 3e radiale est constituée uniquement d'herbiers à Thalassia. Alors, cependant, depuis 2016, l'abondance des oursins verts régresse de façon considérable pour le site de la Passacola et le site de Fajou le site de Fajou. Donc, en 2024, on a une perte de 85% d'individus pour le site de Fajou, 81% pour le site de la Passacola et 36% pour le site de Carrette. Alors, on a essayé de déterminer des hypothèses pour expliquer ce phénomène. Donc, on a tout d'abord le réchauffement climatique. Donc, d'après la littérature, une augmentation de la température au-dessus de 28 degrés aurait un impact négatif sur la fertilisation et l'embryogénèse des oursins blancs. Et au-delà de 32 degrés, les oursins blancs utilisent leur énergie uniquement pour rester en vie, ce qui fait qu'ils n'ont plus d'énergie pour produire les œufs et se reproduire. Donc, grâce à des sondes enregistreuses installées de la température de l'eau de la mer installées dans la baie du Grand Cul-de-Sac marin à différentes profondeurs, donc moins 23 mètres, moins 10 mètres et moins 3 mètres, nous avons pu calculer la durée du nombre de jours où la température a dépassé 28 degrés et avoir la température maximale atteinte. Donc, si on regarde ce tableau, on voit qu'en 2016, on a 247 jours. Nous avons eu 247 jours au-delà du seuil de tolérance pour la fertilisation et l'embryogénèse des oursins blancs. Et on voit que c'est à partir de cette année-là qu'il y a eu une régression de l'abondance des oursins blancs pour le site de Fajou et des oursins verts pour le site de la Passacola. Et on voit que les années qui suivent révèlent également des températures supérieures à 28 degrés et dont la durée a varié entre 5 mois et 7 mois. On a aussi une hypothèse qui pourrait expliquer ce phénomène, c'est la pollution. Parce que les gamètes et les embryons d'oursins blancs sont connus pour être affectés négativement par un certain nombre de substances toxiques, notamment les phosphates, les nitrates, les eaux de ruissellement et les effluents d'eau usée. Et la baie du Grand Cul-de-Sac marin, en fait, est un bassin qui récolte tous les contaminants venant des côtes. Alors, voici un exemple de graphe, donc de graphique présentant les variations de température de l'eau de la mer sur la barrière récifale à moins 23 mètres de profondeur au cours de l'année 2023. Donc, l'examen de ce graphique montre qu'en fait que la température de l'eau a dépassé la valeur critique de 28 degrés Celsius pendant 215 jours, soit plus de 7 mois. Alors, une autre hypothèse, ce serait les prédateurs. D'après la littérature, donc, on a certains gastéropodes, comme les casques, et certains poissons de récif, comme les balistes, qui sont des prédateurs d'oursins. Cependant, ces prédateurs n'ont jamais été inventoriés au cours de nos suivis. Et enfin, une autre hypothèse, ce serait le taux de recrutement qui est très faible. Donc, le nombre important d'oursins blancs qui ont mesuré a permis de tracer un histogramme de la fréquence de répartition des diamètres des tests. Là, sur ce diagramme, on voit que les juvéniles sont très Les juvéniles, en fait, c'est des oursins qui font 2 cm. On voit qu'ils sont très, très peu représentés. Et ils correspondent pourtant au stock de renouvellement. Et le faible nombre d'oursins de cette catégorie pourrait s'expliquer par le fait que leur habitat est différent de celui des adultes. En fait, les jeunes oursins sont observés dans les zones sableuses ou localisés dans les débris coralliens. Enfin, les oursins immatures, donc entre 3 et 6,5 cm, représentent 33% pour la zone le site de Fajou et 26% pour le site de la Passacola. Et on peut observer donc que c'est en fait les oursins adultes représentent la majorité des oursins observés. Ok, c'est presque fini. Alors, bon, c'est dommage, c'est pas le bon, mais tant pis. Donc, en fait, en conclusion, on peut dire que les causes du déclin des oursins blancs et des oursins verts peuvent être dues à des facteurs environnementaux. On a vu le réchauffement climatique, la pollution, mais peuvent être dues aussi à des facteurs biologiques comme la prédation, le taux de recrutement et aussi les fluctuations naturelles de ces populations. Et enfin, peut-être que l'on pourrait aussi parler de facteurs de gestion, parce que depuis 2022, en fait, les mesures de protection semblent insuffisantes. Pourtant, il n'y a eu aucune infraction de braconnage qui n'a été révélée pendant toutes ces périodes de suivi. Et bon, il faut dire aussi que les zones protégées ne sont pas des zones étanches et qu'elles peuvent être impactées par des perturbations extérieures. Alors cependant, ces suivis, bien sûr, vont se poursuivre pour connaître l'évolution de ces espèces. Alors voici les contributeurs de cette étude. Donc on a les agents du Parc national, Didier Baltride qui est présent dans la salle, Sébastien Rivenon, Noémie Léger, je ne sais pas où elle est, Noémie, là-bas, Thibaut Glaser, absent, et Claude Bouchon. Merci pour votre attention.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Simone. Good work. Very good. Any short questions for Simone? All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Good job. You worked hard on that one. Thank you for kicking that off. Oh, but wait. Maybe we do have a question. We do have a question. May we have a microphone? Uh-oh. Simone,
oui.
Stay here. Stay with me. Stay with me.
Oui. Merci beaucoup pour la présentation très intéressante. Est-ce que s'il fallait faire des mesures, vous m'entendez bien? Des mesures de gestion ou de conservation supplémentaires, ce seraient lesquelles? Est-ce que c'est possible?
Alors, les mesures de gestion, c'est quand même déjà des zones qui ont une forte protection maximale, puisqu'on est en cœur de parc. Alors, les mesures supplémentaires, c'est peut-être nous donner des moyens supplémentaires, autant humains avoir plus de monde et peut-être plus de bateaux, quoi, pour pouvoir être plus présent sur le terrain. Parce qu'en fait, on n'est quand même pas si nombreux que ça pour une superficie qui est relativement importante.
All right, thank you. So our next speaker is Jessica Crillon, who's the director at the Parc Natural Marine de la Martinique, accompanied by Eloise Mathieu. I'm pleased to have you both. They also will be speaking in French, so please go back to your translation if you need to. Excellent to see you. Speaking about, we're switching over now to think also about fishers. All right, thank you.
No, attends. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. So, like she said, yes, we're gonna do this in French. So sorry for English people, but it's a rest for French brain a little bit in this week. I think they need it too. So, my name is Eloise Mathieu. I'm the Mon nom est Héloïse Mathieu, je suis chargée de mission en pêche et aquaculture durable. Et voici ma collègue.
Bonjour, Jessica Crillon, chargée de mission patrimoine naturel marin au Parc naturel marin de Martinique. Et c'est moi le maillon faible en anglais.
Et du coup, nous avons décidé de vous parler aujourd'hui de l'acceptabilité des aires marines protégées par les marins pêcheurs. Et du coup, quels outils nous pouvons développer. Donc on va vous présenter un petit peu ce que nous, on a fait jusqu'ici au parc, sachant qu'il est assez récent. Mais aussi, on voulait avoir beaucoup d'échanges à la fin avec vous pour savoir un petit peu comment ça se passe chez vous, connaître aussi les gestionnaires d'aires marines protégées, avoir leur retour d'expérience. Donc pour ceux qui n'étaient pas là lundi, je fais juste un bref rappel sur ce qu'est le parc naturel marin de Martinique. Donc c'est une aire marine protégée créée en 2017 où on va essayer de trouver le compromis entre la conservation et le développement socio-économique. Cette aire marine protégée, elle recouvre toute la ZEE de la Martinique, c'est-à-dire 48 900 km².
Donc en fait, un parc naturel marin, à la différence du parc national, par exemple, qu'on vient de voir avec Simone, c'est qu'on n'a pas de réglementation propre. C'est en fait un choix qui a été fait dans les différents types d'aires marines protégées qu'il existe en France. En fait, ce n'était pas un parc forcément accepté et voulu. En plus, il est très grand, il est récent. Et en fait, l'objectif, c'est vraiment le dialogue. Donc, c'est vrai que parfois, le temps paraît long pour convaincre l'ensemble du conseil de gestion, parce qu'en fait, le parc marin a une gouvernance. Donc, les décideurs du parc, c'est une 50aine de membres. Et dans ce conseil de gestion, il est territorial. Donc, on a à la fois des pêcheurs, on a 8, on a aussi des associations environnementales, on a des élus, on a les professionnels du tourisme. Et en fait, toutes ces personnes-là doivent se mettre d'accord à la fois sur des avis techniques et conformes. C'est notre pouvoir. On peut rendre des avis quand il y a des projets, par exemple d'agrandissement de ports ou d'autres projets impactants sur l'environnement. Mais aussi, notre autre force, c'est que nous avons des ressources. Donc, nous sommes partis de 2017, nous étions 3 et maintenant, nous sommes 20. Nous avons une équipe opération. Dans la salle, nous avons Kenza Passavoir qui travaille beaucoup sur les sargasses, mais sur d'autres thématiques. Nous avons Lilia Lecomte sur la qualité de l'eau. Nous avons aussi Axel Lefaucheur qui a présenté son poster sur sa thèse. Et nous sommes vraiment une équipe maintenant prête à fonctionner.
Et donc, au-delà du conseil de gestion, on a aussi un plan de gestion qui a été travaillé, je crois, sur pratiquement 3 ans. Et un des enjeux forts dans ce plan de gestion, c'est d'avoir donc une mer toujours nourricière à travers l'exploitation, mais durablement des ressources, et qui serait garante du coup des activités économiques sur le long terme. Alors maintenant, quels outils mettre en place justement pour accomplir ces objectifs ? Aujourd'hui, on va vous présenter 3 exemples d'outils. Donc la cartographie des biocénoses, le suivi de ressources, d'effets réserves, et aussi tout ce qui est justement acquisition de plus de connaissances sur les pratiques des pêcheurs et leurs préoccupations principales.
Donc au tout départ, comme on est quand même un parc récent, on a fait le point sur l'ensemble des études et des suivis qui sont déjà en place au sein de la Martinique. Parce qu'il faut savoir que c'est quand même grand, 48 000 km², et qu'on a déjà des acteurs très impliqués sur les suivis et sur le territoire. Ce qu'on a mis en place, c'est déjà la cartographie des biocénoses marines, de 0 à 40 mètres de profondeur sur l'ensemble du territoire, avec 500 plongées de vérification sur l'ensemble des habitats qui ont été déterminés par le MNHN, le Muséum d'histoire naturelle, récemment. Ça nous permet de connaître les zones, évidemment, de mangroves, de récifs coralliens et d'herbiers, et ça permet aussi de partager avec l'ensemble des acteurs les zones pour lesquelles les reproductions, en tout cas des espèces, sont importantes.
Et moi, je voulais vous montrer aussi cette carte. En fait, là, c'est plus la réglementation. Donc, c'est vrai que quand on dit aire marine protégée, ça ne veut pas dire sanctuarisation ou réserve naturelle où tout est interdit. C'est bien plus compliqué que ça. Et que vous voyez que, en fait, dans la ZEE, on va surtout avoir des réglementations strictes sur le littoral. Et ce qui nous saute un petit peu aux yeux, là, c'est la zone orange foncé, tout ici et ici. toute cette zone-là, elle est interdite à la pêche, pas pour protéger la biodiversité, mais en raison sanitaire due à la contamination au chlordécone. En réserve, on a aussi ce côté-là au nord, tout ce qui est vert, mais vous voyez qu'il y a aussi un découpage dans la réserve avec en fait une réglementation différente. Et en fait, ce qui est même difficile à voir, c'est là vous avez des petites zones hachées en noir qui sont en fait les dernières zones de cantonnement de pêche qui ont été décidées par les marins-pêcheurs il y a déjà plus d'une dizaine d'années. Enfin, tout ça, c'est pour montrer qu'en fait, on a des réglementations assez différentes. Il y a des interdictions de pêche, il y a des interdictions d'ancrage. Mais du coup, en fait, notre objectif, c'est aussi de montrer la plus-value de ces réglementations, notamment des réserves, et d'essayer du coup de prouver l'intérêt de toutes ces réglementations. Et notamment, vous avez aussi, donc comme a dit ma collègue Jessica, il y a Axel Le Faucheur qui vous a présenté le projet Trace en poster, qui, elle, se concentre vraiment du coup sur les zones chlordécone pour voir si finalement, même si c'est une protection qui est liée à des raisons sanitaires, on a un effet réserve qui pourrait se voir. Parce que c'est aussi une forte demande des marins-pêcheurs d'avoir plus de connaissances sur ces zones-là.
Donc, on a, comme je disais tout à l'heure, beaucoup de suivis qui nous montrent, et on a des suivis blanchissement. Là, on a relancé un suivi blanchissement puisqu'on est encore dans une période où il va y avoir encore un pic et un post cette année, mais aussi le suivi de l'effet réserve sur 2 zones cette année en phase test, et en fait, on va le relancer l'année prochaine sur plus de zones. On a dû choisir des zones à l'intérieur de la réserve qui ressemblent à certaines zones à l'extérieur de la réserve pour pouvoir comparer. Donc déjà, c'était très compliqué de trouver des habitats similaires et homogènes dans les 2 espaces pour pouvoir les comparer. Ensuite, on a travaillé sur plusieurs types de protocoles, transectes, quadras, suivi poisson, oursin. Et c'est vrai que les résultats, là, on va bientôt les avoir, mais ce qui est sûr quand on est sous l'eau, c'est déjà, on voit la dégradation des écosystèmes, et on en a parlé toute cette journée, et on voit qu'à l'intérieur des réserves, des zones où il y a le moins de pression, les poissons sont plus diversifiés, plus gros, et la biomasse est plus importante.
Alors, en termes d'acquisition de connaissances par rapport aux pratiques de pêche et des attentes surtout des marins-pêcheurs. Donc c'est vrai que le parc il a été créé en 2017, mais en chargée de mission pêche et aquaculture, finalement, je suis la première à être arrivée sur cette thématique à peine cette année. Mais on a fait quand même quelques études et enquêtes auprès des marins-pêcheurs avant. Donc on avait commencé par des enquêtes auprès d'une quarantaine de marins-pêcheurs, déjà pour connaître un petit peu, eux, leur ressenti sur l'état des stocks de poissons. Et dans l'ensemble, on voit bien que soit pour certaines espèces, ils vont dire que c'est assez stable, mais il y a une grosse partie aussi qui se rendent bien compte, même à leur échelle humaine, qu'il y a quand même, qu'on ne va pas en tout cas dans le bon sens, qu'il y a une diminution de la ressource. Et parfois même, c'est surtout les dires des anciens qui eux-mêmes le répètent, que voilà, les générations d'avant, c'était beaucoup plus facile finalement la pêche parce qu'on n'allait pas si loin et on n'avait pas besoin d'autant de casiers, par exemple. Il y a aussi eu l'étude SEN du coup, que j'ai présentée lundi, qui avait été réalisée par Axel Le Faucheur. Et en fait, actuellement, j'essaye surtout de multiplier le plus d'échanges en tête-à-tête avec les marins-pêcheurs pour justement qu'ils se sentent libres de parole, parce que c'est vrai qu'on sent bien que selon si on est en collectivité, enfin dans le collectif ou en tête-à-tête, on ne va pas avoir la même qualité d'échange. Et je pense en tout cas que c'est comme ça qu'on peut construire une relation de confiance, créer du tissage, du lien et surtout essayer de se comprendre l'un et l'autre. Tout ça dans l'objectif, bien sûr, de trouver sur quoi on peut travailler ensemble, quelles expérimentations on serait prêt à faire ensemble et trouver des meilleures pratiques, en fait.
Donc en fait, nous deux, chargés de mission patrimoine naturel et chargés de mission des pêches, voilà, c'est un peu comme le GCFI finalement. Il y a toute une partie avec les scientifiques qui présentent leurs résultats, mais il y a aussi la profession de la pêche qu'il faut qu'il faut essayer de protéger quelque part. Et donc c'est pour ça qu'on a les mêmes objectifs, c'est cette mer nourricière. Donc oui, on fait des suivis. Donc à chaque fois, et on a pu le voir encore aujourd'hui, on voit que la dégradation, elle se poursuit, qu'elle va vite. Les pêcheurs, comme le disait le président du comité régional des pêches, quand il y a de moins en moins de poissons, eh ben, ils vont augmenter l'effort de pêche plutôt que qu'on ait une réflexion globale. Et malheureusement, on se rend compte que même dans les zones de cantonnement qui ont été choisies par les pêcheurs, il y a du braconnage. On a une équipe de police de l'environnement qui est sur le terrain. Et malheureusement, ces zones ne sont pas respectées, ainsi que la zone chlordéconée.
Oui, donc là, en fait, on aimerait bien avoir surtout des échanges. Donc, non, mais c'est bon, c'est la dernière diapo. Ok. Oui, mais et du coup, moi aussi, une de mes questions principales, c'est est-ce que finalement, il faut convaincre le plus de marins pêcheurs pour aller vers des changements de pratiques, ou finalement est-ce qu'on se concentre vers les quelques volontaires et en donnant l'exemple, les autres vont suivre? Ça, c'est par exemple une réflexion que je me pose souvent. et il y a souvent, en fait, finalement, on trouve que il va y avoir beaucoup de bonne volonté, il va y avoir beaucoup de pêcheurs qui vont dire oui, c'est bon, je suis partant et tout. Mais il suffit qu'il y ait 1 ou 2 réfractaires et ça arrive aussi à casser le mouvement et ils ne vont pas forcément changer leurs habitudes ou leurs pratiques. Donc voilà. Merci pour votre attention et puis surtout j'espère avoir des échanges avec vous.
Thank you very much. We do have time for some questions.
Yeah. You
and
can
some
ask
discussion.
in English if you want.
Who would like to ask some questions? It's making me think of the presentation by Turks and Caicos participants, a fisher folk group, Marta and John, who presented a lot of the outreach materials that the Turks and Caicos have developed various outreach materials for fishers and work closely in the distribution of those, including the video that was in Cinefish and some handout materials. Have you done that, or are you in a position to do some outreach, some materials to be able to give
when they give us, they gave them, for example, phones, no? That kind of material?
Or just outreach, communication materials, or posters, or cards, or videos, or...
Well, phones, no. But, I mean, we, even when, not ourselves, but for example, if Romer gave them shirts or things like that, but it didn't really improve the collaboration. It's not that easy. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can maybe work for 1 year or 2, but not long term.
Mm-hmm. Have you done a video at all with the fishers? Any videos?
No videos, no.
Or for them?
So, is that some advice you think it will work?
I think there's a whole range of materials that we do have that we can share from around the region. Yeah. Did someone, Dalila, you had a question here? Do we have a mic?
No, un question, un coms.
Yeah.
Pour les aires marines protégées, je pense qu'il n'y a pas de recette. C'est comme les enfants. Tu es parent, tu as tes enfants, il y a de la littérature, tu peux lire tout ce que tu veux, et finalement, chaque papa et maman fait comme il peut. Et la seule chose que je tiens à vous transmettre, c'est de dire bravo les filles, et à toute l'équipe du parc de Guadeloupe, aussi au parc de Martinique. Vous allez bien réussir et vous allez trouver votre recette. Je suis persuadée de ça. Voilà.
Merci Dalila. Et juste pour finir, on avait ramené aussi des guides sur les éco-gestes. Donc on peut vous en distribuer, venez nous voir. Et voilà.
Yes. Oui, par rapport à la... Donc, du coup, vous avez dit qu'on engage, donc voilà. donc j'essaie de répondre à la question par rapport au comment pour changer les pratiques, voilà, que ça fonctionne pas, etc. Et je me disais, est-ce que qu'est-ce qui est présenté en fait pour changer les pratiques? Est-ce que on aura une augmentation de la ressource et donc de vos ressources financières, donc du coup, s'il y a plus de poissons, ça ira mieux pour leurs revenus. Est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose qui est proposé pour compenser? Comment ça se passe? Parce que du coup, j'essaie de voir si vous dites que ça ne fonctionne pas, est-ce que tout de suite, dès le début en fait, de la discussion, il y a une proposition qui est faite ou la proposition elle pourrait venir d'eux si on leur demande comment ils voudraient faire. Est-ce que aussi il y a un suivi, donc c'est-à-dire quand on veut travailler avec les personnes, on parle souvent de capacity building, etc. C'est vrai que c'est un terme où je me demande si on ne devrait pas plutôt changer en capacity sharing, parce qu'on a toujours cet effet top-down qui vient, surtout quand on travaille avec les pêcheurs. Donc voilà, c'est pour...
Ouais, par rapport au changement de pratique, c'est vrai que pour l'instant, de toute façon, on ne leur a pas demandé forcément de changer de pratique. Là, on était aussi sur l'aspect de juste respecter déjà la réglementation qui est en place, et même les zones de cantonnement qui ont pu être mis en place il y a des années par des marins-pêcheurs. En fait, même ces zones-là, elles ne sont pas forcément respectées. Il y a du braconnage. Et souvent, par rapport aux ressources, quand on dit que ça, même s'il y a changement de pratique, il pourrait y avoir des améliorations, c'est vrai que je trouve qu'il n'y a pas souvent de remise en question forcément de même. Il y a souvent beaucoup d'autres facteurs. Du coup, c'est difficile, effectivement, de se dire que c'est eux qui va changer la donne, tu vois ce que je veux dire. Il y a aussi beaucoup d'acteurs, il y a de la pêche illégale, il y a la qualité de l'eau et tout. Comment ? Okay. Et il y a aussi il y a différents types de pêche, effectivement, il y a les professionnels, les loisirs, donc c'est souvent on va pointer du doigt en fait l'autre, alors que, enfin, on sait que si chacun il met quand même du sien, il prend sa part de responsabilité, on peut aller vers du mieux. Mais c'est vrai que pour l'instant, de toute façon, en termes de pratique, on n'a pas eu à leur demander de changer quoi que ce soit, quoi. Là, c'était déjà aussi le respect de la réglementation actuelle et des zones. Ouais, il faut qu'on parte.
No, thank you. We're glad to have time given that we're kind of in the home of the French West Indies here, so we're pleased to have Guadeloupe and Martinique participating so much at GCFI. So thank you for the presentation. Please continue. Thank you. Very nice. Please continue the discussion. And also Francesca, Fran had a question for the ladies from Martinique. Perhaps you can follow that afterwards. Okay? All right. So next on our program, we have Alexandra Pineda Munoz. She's come all the way from San Andres in Colombia, and she's going to be speaking with us. She's a PhD candidate at the Universidad Nacional de Colombia, speaking about the long-term trajectory of the threatened coral, Acropora palmata, in Seaflower Marine Protected Area, Seaflower Reserve. She'll be speaking in English.
Yes, that's right. Sorry, I don't speak that much French. But hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here. So yes, I'm Alexandra Pineda Munoz, and I'm going to be talking about long-term trajectory of the threatened coral Acropora palmata in San Andres Island, Seaflower Marine Protected Area. And this was done in collaboration with Valeria Pizarro, who is from Perry Institute, Alfredo Abril Howard, also from National University of Columbia Caribbean Campus, doing a PhD too, and Rubén Azcárate from the Environmental Authority Coralina. And this is the first chapter for my PhD project, which is titled Conservation of Genetic Diversity of Threatened Corals for the Restoration of Their Populations using Acropora palmata in San Andres Island as a model for demonstration. So the research problem for my project is a rapid decline of coral populations and, of course, their loss of genetic diversity, which is a critical factor for coral resilience and adaptive potential. Sorry, a little nervous. Of course, what we want to do is we are aiming to identify and evaluate strategies that can safeguard genetic diversity in order to support long-term restoration and resilience of threatened coral species. So my main research question is how to conserve genetic diversity for threatened corals in order to restore their natural populations. But we're going to focus on the first chapter, as I said, which is what is the status of Acropora palmata in San Andres Island and how has it changed over the past few decades. Of course, what we're going to focus is the changes over time. Now, I did choose this species because we know it's a keystone species. I'm not going to go, of course, into detail about it, but we know it's important because of its ecological role, ecosystem services, and importance in fisheries and biodiversity. And of course, it has the threatened status. It has conservation measures and restoration efforts regionally, which I think we all have seen. Now, San Andres Islands, for all of you who were not in the GCFI77 version, is within the Seaflower Biosphere Reserve, which encompasses the archipelago of San Andres, Providence, and Santa Catalina, Western Caribbean, of which San Andres is the main island, and it's located in the southern portion of the MPA. It is a 27 square kilometer coral island with a 7 kilometer semicircular barrier reef with fringing patch and lagoon reefs inside. And it has a secondary barrier reef composed mainly of Acropora palmata. Now, Little Reef, as it is called, is a shallow coral reef located 200 meters inside the barrier reef, 1,300 meters long, and inside the marine protected area in a no entry, no take zone. It is composed mainly of branching corals and other reef building organisms. We can see it right here. Now, this is just to show the marine protected area. It is divided into 3 zones, northern, central, and southern portion, of which San Andres, as I said, is in the southern section. And this is to show how the MPA is zoned. So as I was telling you before, I don't know if this has a laser. Yeah, as I was telling you before, this right here is Little Reef, and it is located within the preservation and conservation zone. It was described originally by Geister, and again, in 2007 by Diaz, showing us, I'm showing you this map to show you where Acropora palmata is located. It is the red areas on the map. So it is pretty much located in fringing reefs around the island and in the barrier reef. I chose Little Reef because it is the reef that is inside the MPA that has long-term monitoring. So of course, what happened with the population throughout time? So I had to go, of course, through all the technical reports, and everything was published and unpublished. And what did I find? So first, Geister's description from 68, published in 73 and 75. Then the first monitoring that started around 93 with CARICOM, which some of us also did in our islands or places. And then we had Diaz and collaborators, 1995 and 96, published basically how the coral reefs were composed for the islands. Then we had CIMAC, which was the National Coral Reef Monitoring System for Colombia, started in 98. And then again, a different method, which was the rapid evaluation assessments, which were proposed by Valeria Pizarro on 2001. And the reason why we changed from CARICOM to CIMAC, which was the national one, and then to ERA was because CIMAC took too long to do it. And so basically for a 180 square kilometer archipelago with 7 islands and keys and a lot of reefs, it is really, really hard to do this monitoring. So the ERA method actually just takes 20 minutes. So you go, you do a rapid reef assessment, and you obtain enough information to know how the reef is. This was done, of course, all the way up to 2024. So we have descriptive information and coral cover information. Unfortunately, for the coral cover percentage, some are point intercept, which are the CARICOM methods, and while the ERA methods are photo quadrants. So this is sort of like having apples and bananas. Nobody likes to compare apples and bananas. So of course, we always have to do a data analysis. What we did was pretty much transform this data into ArcSine and log to see if there was normalization of the data. There wasn't, so we had a Kendall's-Tau analysis just to see how data ranked could be compared or correlated. What did I find? Well, major weather events were with our main what mainly changed our coral cover throughout time. We had Irene hurricane in 1971, Joan hurricane in 1988, and Eta and Iota in 2020. Now we also had major bleaching events, 1998 bleaching event, 2005, and of course 2023 and 24. when we compared this percentage of coral cover, what we found was that from original descriptions from Geister in 73, around 50 to 70%, after Joanne and of course white band disease, it came down to 45%. Then after 1998 bleaching event, it came down to 30. That's 15% less. Then after 2005 bleaching event, it came down to 16%. That's 14% less. And then after Eta and Iota, which was a huge hurricane for us, it only came down 4% less. But then for bleaching events in last year, 2023, came down to 1.25. That's, again, 11% less. So these are just, the results of the statistics that we did. But in the end, what did we have? We had live coral cover, and now we don't. Again, I feel, like the same sadness, of course, that I think we all have felt when going down to our reefs where we grew up and just pretty much seeing that it's all been lost. But hope is not lost. So again, I kept on doing the monitoring even though the reef was pretty much dead. And what I found was that some branches had actually survived basically on the base, but I'm saying like 4 colonies with just a little bit of branches, and these are actually recovering. So for the rest of the reefs, of course, recently dead, became rock, macroalgae, turf algae. We all know how it works. This is regardless of biosphere reserve protection and marine protected area protection. I told you in the beginning, it is inside the MPA, inside the no take, inside the no entry. This MPA is being enforced. So I know enforcement is important, but it's not only about enforcement when we're talking about climate change. What did we really find? Our results suggest that MPAs alone may not be enough to mitigate thermal stress causing bleaching, hence not achieving the conservation goals we are aiming. We have found similar results in other authors in other areas with the same species, with other species, of course. And I know that Rinkovich suggested that we do implement restoration methods. I want to say that in Little Reef, restoration was implemented, basically asexual restoration methods. So, of course, we should do sexual too. But our main conclusions are that the alarming decline of Acropora palmata population in San Andres Island serves as a critical indicator of the broader coral reef crisis facing the Caribbean. MPAs, as they are, might not be able to protect coral species susceptible to climate change and diseases. These findings underscore an urgent need for integrated science-based conservation models that do not only protect against localized impact, but also address the mounting challenges of climate change. We do recommend active restoration efforts that also include sexual restoration strategies and to integrate climate resilience into MPA management. Now also to implement ex situ conservation measures, which we don't have in the island, that can assure mid and long-term conservation of genetic diversity and that allow for future restoration efforts of the populations. I want to thank, of course, Coralina, who gave a huge bunch of data for our studies, National University, Perry Institute, Seaflower Research and Conservation Foundation for the funding, and the GCFI for having me here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. It's sobering results. And I noticed on your opening slide, you mentioned that part of the objectives is looking at the pathways to restoration.
Yes.
So, do we have questions from the floor? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Alexandra. So I wanted to know now that the cover of Acropora palmata has been decreasing, and you are still monitoring, and that's super important to monitor and to see those long-term changes and to remember what it was before. But so in the MPA now, are there projects ongoing and managed by the MPA practitioners to kind of restore or act, do something else, and use like the suggestions that you made for trying to preserve what's left or restore?
Yes, of course. And I'm going to show this slide just so I can make a point here. So Little Reef was within the MPA, as I said, and the secondary barrier reef composed mainly of Acropora palmata was the most important Acropora palmata and Acropora cervicornis reef within the island, but it's not the only one. It's just that since it was the most important one, it was protected, and there's a lot of data of it. Now, there are 2 other fringing reefs with Acropora palmata that I'm monitoring, and they are sexually active. I was able to see spawning this year, actually in August, on the 6th night. And they are located, all this part of the barrier reef is gone too. All this part here, the barrier reef is gone. In the southern portion, we do have a little bit, and there's another bit here and another bit here. This part is gone too. So I'm trying to work here. I'm going to do genetic analysis and see if we can do, well, what do we have, and see if with that we can do restoration, of course, in other important areas.
Thank you. I believe there's another question.
So, really interesting talk, although depressing, as you say. What's the status of the grazer population there in terms of fish and urchins, parrotfish, surgeonfish, urchins and things?
Okay, thanks. So parrotfish populations are threatened. Actually, just a couple of years ago, we were able to include 5 species of parrotfish within the red list of threatened fish of Colombia. And, but they are protected. Of course, you are not allowed to fish them any time of the year. And we do have a good population of diadema, of sea urchins. But again, what we found basically was that the main reason why the reef was lost was bleaching more than disease or macroalgae cover. Was that sort of?
Yeah, so the point is they're not really there to help with the recovery, even though they weren't part of the decline necessarily. They're not really there to assist you as you try to restore the
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, sea urchin has made a comeback. So, for example, in the reef that is alive on the western side, I mean, I could count well, like 18 in a small colony, around 18 diadema. So it's actually doing pretty well on that side. Yeah.
Okay. We have one more question. Just time for that. It's interesting, while they go there, the AGRA is currently working, including with Colombia, on a project with CORDAP and MPA Connect. GCFI is involved in that looks at planning restoration roadmaps, taking into account herbivory and thinking about what is sensible to do going forward. So that's an ongoing 3-year project that's hopefully we will help.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It was a great presentation. So I have a question. Is there any indication that something else like pollution from the runoff water is almost helping to see this damage into the coral reef?
That's a great question, because we could think that because the northern, again the map, sorry, that because the northern part here was the one that was lost, maybe there's pollution there. But there's a, how you call it, emisario submarino, sewage tube, literally just a tube to the ocean with the sewage. It's on the west side where the live population of Acropora palmata still is. So in the northern portion, we do not have, it's actually like it's a secondary barrier reef, so we get all the currents, and it's actually like pretty good status of the water, if I could say that. Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Alexandra. Please continue to speak with everyone. Okay. All right, so let's, moving on to our next speaker, I'd like to introduce Lucy Labouze from Spore RAC in Guadeloupe. And she's a project officer working with Spore Priority MPAs. As we look at how best to rescue, restore corals, it's critically important that we have good management planning in place, which also critically links with financing. So she is going to speak to us today about some updating management plans.
Thank you. Bel bonsoir tout le monde. Good afternoon. Happy to see you. Buenas tardes. Bonsoir. So my name is Lucy Labouze. I work at the Spore Regional Activity Center, and before jumping into management plans, I wanted to give you some overall context of the Spore protocol, which is the protocol who try to to support and to protect biodiversity in the Caribbean. And I won't do it myself because I thought a little drawing might be better than a long speak. So please.
In 2024, 37 protected areas are listed under the SPA. 70% of the population of the
So I had a great video for you that's kind of not working.
We can show it at the end if necessary. Do you want to continue?
Yeah, sure. Or do you want to try it last time? Okay, we'll try one last time.
The Greater Caribbean region lives near the coast and is directly dependent on marine and coastal ecosystems for their livelihood. To protect the environment of the Caribbean Sea, an international treaty called the Cartagena Convention was established in 70% of the population of the Greater Caribbean region lives near the coast and is directly dependent on marine and coastal ecosystems for their livelihood. To protect the environment of the Caribbean Sea, an international treaty called the Cartagena Convention was established in 1983. In 1990, a protocol aimed specifically at protecting marine and coastal biodiversity was established and signed by 18 countries. This is the SPA Protocol for Specially Protected Areas and Wildlife. To protect remarkable species and ecosystems, a list of protected areas of special regional importance has been drawn up based on ecological, cultural, and socio-economic and managerial criteria. In 2024, 37 protected areas are listed under the SPA Protocol in 15 territories throughout the Caribbean. These protected areas face similar challenges: the consequences of climate change, pollution, the influx of sargassum, illegal fishing, the search for sustainable financing, and so on. To help protected area managers in the Caribbean to work together to meet these challenges, the SPA Protected Area Manager Network was created in 2023. It is coordinated by the Regional Activity Center for the SPA Protocol, based in Guadeloupe.
That was better than what I could have done. And if we're going back to the presentation, yes. So that's where we stand. In October last year, we had this bunch of great people who gathered together and who really decided to work together and to try to find solutions, or at least try to exchange all the similar challenges they are facing. And at Sporac, we are trying to do two things. At a regional scale, as a network, we really want to bring the voice of these Caribbean managers to a worldwide level, and we also want to provide some helps to these managers. So what we've been doing for the first year of network implementation was to ask them on which topic they wanted to work, and then we had a couple of technical webinars and share with them some technical materials to help them running their protected area. We also support on-site projects, and we'll have a second in-person meeting in a couple of days to build with them a roadmap for capacity building until 2030. Among all the different topics they want to work on, one was climate change for sure, and another big one was management plan. So, as you know, and because we have some managers in the room, you might know that better than I, management plan, that's the one big document, the one big framework that helps protected areas to work. It defines strategies, objectives, timeline, how to work, stakeholders, and so on. So that's really the one huge document all protected areas should have to be able to work and to be able to have an effective protection of biodiversity. So we have to work on management plan for several reasons. The first one is that that's a need for the SPO protected area managers. They really asked us to help them working on management plan. That's also a way to improve management effectiveness and reach the 30 by 30 goal, which is getting out of COP16. That was kind of the big issue for the Caribbean region, to try to work on this objective. So the idea is to reach 30% of protected seas by 2030, but also to have effective protected areas. That's where we want to work, and that's why we need management plan. As the SPO protocol, this is the third reason why we want to work on management plan. We had a really strong requirement to have protected area within the SPO network who have a great protection planning and management framework. So they have to have legal framework to join the network, functional management body, clearly defined conservation and management objectives. They have to have research and monitoring in place, but above all of this, they have to have a management plan, a management framework in place. The sites should also, to be part of this network, have fill other requirements. They have to include different stakeholders and involve them into participatory processes for management. They have to address public awareness and education program. And so there is some of criteria that they have to fulfill to be part of the network. So that's a big thing for us. These protected areas have to have management plan, and that's also something the contracting parties of the SPO protocol really ask us, to have a network that is really efficient and that can be exemplary for the region. But today, out of the 37 protected areas that are in the network and that had an update management plan when they joined the network, only a quarter have an updated management plan, and almost half of the protected areas have a plan which is out of date by over 5 years. So that's really a big topic and kind of an emergency for us to help the protected area update their management plan. To work on this, we had two great people on board, Carly DeMeyer and Duncan McCrea, that whom I know they've been working in the Caribbean for many years, in the Dutch island and all over the places. And they submit us a project concept, which is this one, having a desk study of the current management plan, running interviews with the protected area managers, and then suggest recommendation at a global level, as well as at a site level, to really give advice to all the managers to help them update their management plan. So for this project, we had a quarter of the SPO protected areas who joined the project, protected areas from Belize, Dominican Republic, St. Vincent, the Grenadines, Colombia, and the Kingdom of Netherlands, Bonaire and Statia. And what have been done is first a management plan scan. So the consultants really studied all the management plan, and they evaluated, what was inside the management plans. They scored the management plans regarding if these elements were in the plan or not, mentioned or not. And then they also conducted interviews with all the staff and managers to know, to verify the data and to ask them more questions about the management plan, how it's used, is it useful, and a bunch of questions that guide them on their studies. And that's kind of the results that came out of this desk study and of this interview, that in the management plan, we have almost the management plan, we have elements about the identification of biodiversity value, we have a geographic scope of the protected area, we had some elements about pressures and threats, and also management strategies. What is not in the management plan, or what is less in the management plan, are some elements about resource availability, about core management tasks, about objectives and time planning. So the conclusion of this desk study, at least the first result, because the project is still going on, is that we have managers who do see why they need management plans, they do see why they need some framework to work, and they really want to have good management plans that fulfill international standards. But that's kind of a heavy process to have a great management plan, and they need access to funding and access to experts, because that's not the same job to run a protected area and to write a management plan. And they also need, from what they say, really strong assistance to engage with stakeholders. From the various presentations we heard, we have some issues with fishermen, for people in the protected area, so they also need assistance engaging with different stakeholders. When it's coming to update management plans, many protected areas are really struggling to implement them. It means that they have these great documents, but then they want to translate them into concrete work plan, and that's something that's kind of more difficult. Like, there is plenty of great management plans that is kind of a 200 pages document somewhere on some desks, and then trying to translate that into concrete actions, kind of something else. So that's where we want to keep working as the SPORAC and at the SPO Protected Area Network, is try to develop a management plan template. And we know there are already lots of materials out, so we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we really want to make sure that all the protected areas have some kind of broad document where they can use to update the management plan. And we also want to develop a really easily process for them to have an updated management plan and really translate that into a concrete action plan for each protected area. So that's what we are going to try to do within the network for the next years. Thank you so much.
Merci. Thank you very much, Lucy. Do we have any questions from the audience about that? All right. I do have a question. As part of that management plan updating work, was there any stakeholder consultation in the process in order to assess the current status of the condition of resources or the threats to resources, or to help prioritize?
No. At this stage, it was a really kind of a desk study plus some quick interviews. It was actually a really small project. But that's kind of the next step also, to see how, for some protected areas, how they do involve the different stakeholders to make sure that what's coming out, especially when we're going to propose some templates and so on, that they're really accurate and that they can really fit into different contexts. So, not yet.
Okay. Very good. Okay, thank you very much, Lucy.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so our next speaker is not Candice, but Adara. She's on the ball. I'm pleased to ask Adara Jaggernaut, who's from Trinidad and Tobago, to come and speak to us about some research that she did for her recent master's degree in Ireland. And Adara is also an assistant to MPA Connect, helping with project management, and she's going to tell us about her work on investigating fish communities on coral reefs with different levels of management. And now we go to Grenada.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Emma said, I'm going to be speaking to you about my master's thesis on investigating fish communities on coral reefs with different levels of management in Grenada, West Indies. So I'm not going to spend too long on the background, because we all know about coral reefs. We know that they protect coastlines, boost fisheries, and they are threatened by overfishing, pollution, and climate change. Coral reef fish are key indicators of reef health. And beyond biomass, we can look at the key metrics like abundance, diversity, size structure, and mean trophic level to give a fuller view of reef health in relation to reef fish. The importance of MPAs, they're essential for conservation, resilience, and sustaining local economies. And nothing comes without its challenges. MPAs struggle with resource demands, illegal fishing, and climate change. So our study objectives are to investigate fish communities on coral reefs with different levels of management in Grenada, and also to examine spatial variation in biomass, diversity, abundance, mean trophic level, and size structure. So this is where Grenada is located. It's very southern in the Lesser Antilles. So our study location, Grenada is located at the southernmost point of the Lesser Antilles. And I'm going to speak to you about 3 different MPAs in Grenada. And Grenada is a tri-island state. We're going to be focusing on Granans in Grenada and Carriacou. So there's Grand Anse MPA, which was established in 2018 with very little management, little to no management. There's been no active enforcement, and it covers about 1,965 hectares. It's the Grand Anse MPA is right here in the purple dots. And then there's Molineux-Beauséjour MPA, which was established in 2001 and has not been continually managed since 2016. So the management and the enforcement kind of fell off after 2016, and it encompasses about 60 hectares. This is where Molineux is. And lastly, there's Sandy Island Oysterbed, which was designated in 2010. It has been actively managed and enforced since 2010, and it encompasses about 659 hectares, and it's all right up here in the pink dots in Carriacou. So our survey design data was collected in May of 2024. Each MPA was divided into 3 sites, which totaled 9 different surveyed sites. We used the AGRA protocol for fish monitoring, and data was collected at predetermined coral reef sites using scuba. We did transect-based surveys, so we did 12 to 17 transects per site, and we used 30-meter transects. And we placed the fish into 5 different size categories. The data that we collected was species identification and size class data. These are the statistical analysis that I'm going to be speaking about. And when we looked at biomass and abundance, we divided the fish into 3 different categories, such as herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores. And all analyses were done using RStudio. I'm going to start by speaking about spatial variation in biomass. This is the equation that we used to calculate biomass. A generalized linear mixed model with gamma distribution was used to analyze biomass with MPA and diet group as fixed effects and site as a random effect. So the carnivores on Sandy Island Oysterbed had significantly higher biomass than on Grand Anse and Molineux-Beauséjour, but there was no significant difference between Grand Anse and Molineux. The omnivores at Sandy Island Oysterbed again had significantly higher biomass than Grand Anse, but there were no significant differences between other MPAs, and there were no significant differences in biomass across the other MPAs. Sorry, this is supposed to be grams per 60 meters squared, not kg. And sorry about that. So this is Grand Anse here, this is Molineux-Beauséjour, and this is Sandy Island. On the graphs, it's always going to be in that order: Grand Anse, Molineux, Sandy Island. So spatial variation in abundance, a generalized linear mixed model with negative binomial distribution, was used to model total fish abundance with MPA and diet group and their interaction as fixed effects and site as a random effect. So again, this is Grand Anse right here, this is Molineux, and this is Sandy Island. Carnivores are in the kind of blue color, herbivores are in the purple, and omnivores are in the green. So the analysis that we did revealed that Sandy Island did have significantly higher biomass and abundance of carnivorous species compared to Grand Anse and Molineux. This could be an indication of stronger enforcement, maybe, and this does align with research that says that stricter protections do support higher numbers of biomass, higher biomass and abundance. But there was no significant differences among the herbivores, which is very interesting because parrotfish are still heavily fished in Grenada. Spatial variation in diversity. This is Grand Anse is the pinky color, Molineux is the blue, and Sandy Island is the green. A linear mixed effects model was used to analyze variation across diversity across MPAs, with MPA as a fixed effect and MPA sites as a random effect. Those tiny dots, these are just the divided sites. And so the Shannon Diversity Index that we used was significantly higher in Molineux and Sandy Island when compared to Grand Anse, but there was no significant difference between Molineux and Sandy Island Oysterbed. So MPAs with protections, such as Sandy Island and, well, kind of Molineux, because there is some type of presence of enforcement in Molineux, had significantly higher Shannon Diversity Index scores compared to the unprotected Grand Anse, but there was no significant difference between Molineux and Sandy Island. We could say that maybe this is because, again, of better enforcement and management, but again, we also didn't take into consideration other factors such as runoff from agriculture, and which does reduce species richness. However, studies from Sims et al. In 2021 does show that fishing was the most significant factor when looking at diversity. Spatial variation in mean trophic levels. This is the calculation that we use to calculate mean trophic levels. I'll explain what mean trophic levels is first. So Pauly et al. In 1998 first proposed mean trophic level, MTL, as an ecosystem, a good ecosystem indicator. The higher the MTL increases the presence of, means the increased presence of larger piscivorous fish, such as the carnivorous fish. And a decline in MTL often signals a smaller, a shift to smaller, lower trophic level species. Sandy Island oysterbed exhibited significantly higher MTL when compared to Grand Anse, who found, and this could, again, might be because of strict enforcement, but also the differences in mean trophic levels suggest varying effectiveness of MPAs in maintaining trophic structure. But again, there are other factors to look at, such as coral health, ecological dynamics, and can also influence mean trophic level. Spatial variation in size structure. So this graph shows the omnivores in Grand Anse, Molineux, and Sandy Island. The size spectra slopes indicate differences in size structure by reflecting how biomass is distributed across various size classes in a community. So the steeper these slopes, this indicates a dominance of smaller individuals, which suggests it could be high predation or overfishing. Shallower slopes do suggest a balanced size structure typical of healthier ecosystems. Sadly, what we found, the differences in slopes observed among MPAs was not statistically significant among the carnivores, herbivores, and omnivores. And this could be because we didn't have enough data to actually see a good full picture. So the main conclusions that we found were there was greater biomass and abundance at Sandy Island oysterbed of biomass and abundance, at Sandy Island oysterbed of carnivores and omnivores compared to other MPAs. Molineux and Sandy Island oysterbed had significantly higher fish diversity than Grand Anse, and Sandy Island oysterbed had significantly higher mean trophic levels than Grand Anse. And these are simple and relatively low-cost visual surveys to generate relatively good fish community indices that shows spatial variation and enforcement relationships in MPAs. This also can contribute to baseline data and provide a foundation for future monitoring and management effectiveness. The limitations, but there were a few limitations in the study, such as the presence of illegal fishing, habitat data gaps, and we had a short temporal scope as our data was collected within a 2-week range. And we hope that maybe future studies can be replicated in the future so that we can see an actual difference over the years. So these are my acknowledgements. This study would not have been possible without my scholarship from Our Shared Ocean, and they were also the funders of the research, and it was a partnership between Atlantic Technological University, Irish Aid, and the Marine Institute, and also St. George's University.
Thank you very much, Adara. Any questions or comments for Adara? These were the Grenadine Islands, Grenadines that were hit badly by Hurricane Beryl.
Mm-hmm.
Was your data set just before?
Yeah, we collected in May, so like mid-May, and I think Beryl was in July, yeah. Yeah.
So it's an interesting data set. Any questions? One at the back from Lindy.
I had a great presentation. Just had one side question. Do you have any idea what the fish communities were outside of the protected areas?
No, we didn't have time to look at that because everything was done within a 2-week window. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Save that for the PhD. All right. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. So, yes, Candice, now you're up. Very pleased to welcome Candice Fields to present for us. Candice is a PhD candidate at Florida International University. She's also engaged with a project in the Bahamas called Sharks and Kids, or Kids and Sharks, and she'll be talking to us about her research using BRUVs to survey sharks in the Atlantic Shark Sanctuary there. Thanks, Candice.
Yes. Thanks, everybody, for staying strong and staying until the last presentation of the day. That's standing between you and some cocktails. I'm Candice, as Emma said, and I'm going to be talking about a small portion of my dissertation research looking at beta remote underwater video studies stations to assess shark population trends in the Bahamas. And I know this is a marine protected area section, but we can think about a shark sanctuary as a little species-specific marine protected area. So, as I'm sure we're all aware, populations of cartilaginous fishes like sharks and rays have faced severe population declines over the past several decades, resulting in over a third, you hate to see that, a third being threatened with extinction. And while there are numerous reasons that this is the case, like climate change and habitat loss, it's really the conservative life history traits of sharks, like their long gestation periods, which resulting in few offspring, as well as their late age at maturity and long lifespans, that makes them highly susceptible to overexploitation. Sorry for the graphic photos. And this is the biggest reason that they're being driven towards extinction. And of course, this is the case across habitat types and life stages. Thankfully, major conservation-based legislation aiming to protect threatened species like the Endangered Species Act and the Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna have the capacity to aid in population recovery. But beyond these sort of major legislative measures, many nations have introduced smaller scale or more specific measures like catch limits or retention bans, as well as the creation of spatial and temporal closures. And a key example of one of these spatial management measures is the introduction of a shark sanctuary. And I'm sure we can all gather what it is, but in case we don't know, a shark sanctuary is an area that prohibits the capture and trade of sharks and shark parts, with the idea of creating a haven of safety for these animals. And to date, there are 30 jurisdictions that have declared shark sanctuaries, and there's several cases where there's evidence that this has either maintained stable or actually bolstered shark populations within that area. And beyond this, they have the capacity to protect very highly threatened species. Unfortunately, though, this strategy has garnered a lot of criticism from local stakeholders, largely because of the perception that a shark sanctuary will result in a large population boom. And shark sanctuaries are also controversial in the scientific sphere because, firstly, baseline data is often lacking, if it exists at all, and enforcement, similarly, is often limited, again, if it even occurs. And this makes evaluating the efficacy of a shark sanctuary, or any MPA really, very challenging. Beyond this, it's also important to note that a shark sanctuary is a type of blanket protection, similar to a marine protected area, that is really not going to hold much conservation power if you don't engage with the correct stakeholders, right? So if you don't have fisher engagement, most likely illegal fishing will still occur if they don't have buy-in. And if you don't minimize harmful gear like long lines and gill nets, which can lead to high levels of shark bycatch, really the conservation power of your shark sanctuary is limited, and you'll result in really only having a paper park, a term I'm sure we're all familiar with. And things get even more complicated for the efficacy of shark sanctuaries when it comes to highly migratory species like the oceanic white-tip shark you see here. But thankfully, shark sanctuaries have the capacity to protect species that are more resident and have smaller home ranges like the Caribbean reef shark. And the rest of this talk will be focused on these coastal species. Now, the Bahamas is home to healthy populations of sharks of very many species, and this is largely because of the long-standing protection measures that have been in place. Which, of course, from the shark conservation perspective, and hopefully the perspective of most, if not all of us in the room, this is a great thing, right? Having a lot of sharks in the Bahamas is great. However, key stakeholders feel that sharks have reached nuisance levels, and this, they feel, has resulted in a drastic increase in negative shark-human interactions like depredation, which is when a part or the entirety of a fisher's catch is taken by a shark, commonly referred to as being sharked in the fishing world, or an increase in shark bites. So all this provides context for my work, or this portion of my work, which aims to assess shark populations in the Bahamas with a focus on coastal species in order to provide data to safeguard the oldest Atlantic shark sanctuary. And like I've already mentioned, sharks have experienced unprecedented declines over the past several decades, and this is evidenced by a large body of work. And all of this has driven a kind of surge for protective efforts across the world. And the Bahamas is a country that is actually at the forefront of these sort of shark conservation, the shark conservation story, which, as I'm sure we can all agree, for a small island nation is a pretty big deal. And the Bahamas, I feel like we don't typically lead the line in a lot of things, so it's exciting to be at the forefront of something like this. And the first major step in protecting sharks in the country was in 1993, when a commercial longline ban created sort of pseudo-sanctuary-like conditions. Then, in 2011, these protections were bolstered when the entire exclusive economic zone of the Bahamas was declared a shark sanctuary, becoming the first shark sanctuary in the Atlantic Ocean to do so, and that's something that I and hopefully the rest of the Bahamians in the crowd are certainly proud of. Yeah. Yes, 242 to the world, as we say. Now, assessments of shark population trends in the Bahamas have been done shortly after the implementation of the shark sanctuary. And they found that coastal shark species like Caribbean reef sharks, which are highly abundant and very, very common throughout our waters, were stable. But it's important to note that these studies only took place off the waters of Bimini and Eleuthera, respectively, and only assessed up to 2015 and 2013. And so while the idea of the fact that these coastal shark species are maintaining stability, we don't have any idea of what's happening in a more holistic sense in the entire Bahamas archipelago, right? 2 islands out of a nation of 700 islands and keys is pretty limited information. But nonetheless, this indication of healthy shark populations, especially coastal species, is great because sharks like the Caribbean reef shark are very ecologically as well as economically important species throughout the Bahamas. But unfortunately, this species is actually classified by the IUCN as endangered throughout its range. And this is something that most people find shocking when I tell them, because especially Bahamians who interact with sharks frequently, because these are like puppy dogs of the sea a little bit when you come to the Bahamas. And so the fact that this species is endangered throughout its range really highlights the importance that the stronghold the Bahamas has for this species is. But again, remember that key stakeholders feel that there's too many sharks, and they've reached nuisance levels, and this has resulted in ongoing calls for the sanctuary to either be scaled back or repealed in its entirety. Boo. But the question that remains unasked is this warranted, right? Is the sanctuary really causing these perceived population booms? And it's now been over a decade since the sanctuary was born, and there have been really minimal assessments on population trends of sharks to investigate this. So we really don't have a scientific answer to say, are there really too many sharks, right? So to address this hypothesis that the shark sanctuary has resulted in a major boom of sharks, I'm going to be repeating a portion of the global fin print study, which I'm happy to talk more with anybody about that's interested. It's a very exciting study that actually highlighted the fact that reef sharks are functionally extinct in many areas across the globe, and this study took place in over 58 nations and jurisdictions. again highlighting the importance of the Bahamas Shark Sanctuary for reef sharks. And so I'll repeat the Bahamas portion of this study to assess shark abundance throughout the Bahamas archipelago. And to do this, I will be using baited remote underwater video stations, or BRUVs for short, to survey the shark abundance on 7 of the 16 previously sampled sites. As you can see here, a BRUV would be composed of a frame, in this case of stainless steel, with a bait arm with 1 kilogram of bait mounted in front of the camera's field of view. And each frame will be deployed for 90 minutes. Any frames that are deployed at the same time, you can imagine you don't want to have a 90-minute deployment and only do one at a time. You'd be doing this till the cows come home. Each individual replicate is 500 meters apart to ensure independence from one another. So basically, studies have shown that 500 meters apart is far enough that the sharks that you're seeing on one camera aren't just swimming back and forth between 2 frames. And videos will be reviewed for max N, which is the typical sort of abundance proxy for baited remote underwater video stations. And so for anyone unfamiliar, if we had the panel on the left, we'd have a max N of 1 for Caribbean reef sharks, and on the right, we would have a max N of 2. We'll analyze the effective year for all sharks, so basically all sharks combined, regardless of species, as well as with particular focus on individual species like Caribbean reef sharks to highlight any changes in abundance overall over time, as well as within specific species over time. To date, 5 of the 7 sites have been, that's false, all of the sites have been sampled. In 2023, North and South New Providence, San Salvador, and Andros, as well as Chub Key and the Berry Islands were sampled. And earlier this year, we finished the sampling with the Exuma Keys and Conception Island, specifically focusing on the Exuma Keys Land and Sea Park, which is a marine protected area. See, I do fit this section. And Conception Island, which is also a protected area. Now, preliminary results, because again, I want to keep this presentation brief for you to get to your gallivanting for the evening, is that the hypothesis that there's this major population boom in sharks because of the shark sanctuary is not really supported, right? Now, at most, our results can indicate that there is a local increase at one site, which is at Chub Key. And this is the case for both Caribbean reef sharks you see in the middle and nurse sharks. And if we look at all sharks, we actually see that there's a 106% increase when we look at the average max N between this current study and the previous one. Which seems like a massive increase, right? 106% is a large amount, but it's important to note that firstly, this is heavily driven by, you get the idea, I'm pointing at the nurse sharks, by the large increase in the nurse shark populations. And this is not really a species that is driving the concern for there being too many sharks in the shark sanctuary, right? So this, combined with the fact that this site actually had the smallest sample size, both in my current survey and in the original 2015 Global Fin Print survey, really shows that it could really just be a stochastic event, right? This could have been a matter of random chance, maybe just at the time that we sampled, there were more sharks in the area. So it's really, in the holistic view, the hypothesis that the populations are booming is really not the case. And instead, it's just that the sanctuary is maintaining stable populations. And so the expected outcomes beyond the simple analysis that we just looked at is that we expect to see a stable max N in terms of statistical significance across all sites throughout the Bahamas, indicating that regulatory changes from a scientific perspective really aren't warranted, right? They're not necessary at this juncture. And in the future, really what we need in the Bahamas for sharks and a variety of other species is continued monitoring in order to effectively say what's happening with the shark sanctuary and what's happening with shark populations. We need much longer term trend data. And so I hope to do continued monitoring after the completion of my PhD and hopefully continue to provide data that will be a science-based thought on how to change, if at all, our shark-based regulations. And before I take any questions, I just want to thank I forgot to put a slide for this because I'm a terrible person, but I want to just thank the funders of this project, especially the Shark Conservation Fund, as well as Florida International University's Women Explorer Award and the Coastlines and Oceans Division's small grant program, which funded me to speak to you today. And I also would like to thank all the local partners in the Bahamas that helped me carry out this work. I was a one-woman team besides going into each individual place and basically begging for help. And so I really do appreciate everybody who has helped me. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, I see some hands going up, Candace. Thanks very much. Good presentation.
Thank you, that was excellent. I very much enjoyed that. A quick question about shark fishing. So prior to the designation of the shark sanctuary in 2011, do you have a measure of how much shark fishing was occurring across the EEZ? Thank you.
Yeah, so targeted shark fishing wasn't a huge thing in the Bahamas, which I think is a big reason that the capacity to enact a sanctuary was relatively smooth. You know, if you think about a country like the Bahamas versus Trinidad and Tobago, perhaps coming in to say, let's have a shark sanctuary, probably really wouldn't fly the same way it did. Most capture was bycatch in like large-scale tuna fisheries. The last export of sort of bycaught shark was around 2007, I want to say. And even the amount of metric tons that were exported in that time, which was, you know, the total tonnage that was exported was about 48. That is drastically less than what is exported in the US in 1 year, and that's our entire exports, right? So shark fishing in the Bahamas was really never a big thing, and so I think that was kind of we had an easier path than others in terms of enacting shark regulations.
Okay, any other questions? Candace? All right, yes, one more. We've got time for one more, and then we'll wrap up then.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to say that we are the Agua Sanctuary, MPA dedicated to marine mammals, and people never think there are too many whales and dolphins. So you are very brave because it's more difficult with sharks. And it could be a problem too, but you said, if I understood well, that the sharks are endangered in a regional scale. Is it regional Caribbean or Bahamas?
So in the Bahamas, they're doing fine, but on the global classification of Caribbean reef sharks is endangered. So you can also imagine if the Bahamas was not being counted towards that status, it could be in an even worse state, right? And like you said, no one's out here being like, watch out for all those whales, you know? So it's a very touchy subject often, talking about wanting there to be an excess in people's minds of sharks, right? But I think a lot of it, what we have to do is start with education, like many of us have talked about, and really try to change people's perspectives and understand, okay, there's not actually, you know, too many sharks or way more sharks than before, just that your mind is programmed to understand what an ocean in depletion looks like. So now we're having recovery and having populations that are at healthy states, and so we need to kind of reshift our mindset to understand this is what it should be like, and we have to learn how to adapt, as well as understanding that things like overfishing and higher fishing pressure also increases the competition that these sharks are facing for fish. And so, of course, these are things that we're going to have to navigate as protections continue to surge.
And do you work with Bahamas stakeholders working on marine mammals protection, and maybe to make awareness raising with sharks and whales and dolphins, because of course sharks are as important as whales and dolphins?
Yeah, so I think there's not necessarily a direct link, but my friends here in the front are amazing Bahamian whale folk, whale and dolphin folk, and I'm sure they would be happy to have me on board. But I also do a lot of outreach with an organization called Sharks for Kids, where we go into schools and give presentations about the importance of sharks and the importance of sharks for the ecosystem and the economy. And the goal there is not to make everybody a shark lover. That's obviously not going to happen. You can give me an amazing presentation about frogs, and I'll never change my mind about hating frogs. But the goal is to get people to understand that we need sharks in the ocean, and just to respect them. And if you can leave them with that, then that's enough.
Okay. A constructive suggestion, I have actually heard fishers say that there are too many turtles and that's creating too many sharks. So
yeah, that's a problem in the Bahamas as well.
Overlay.
With the turtle protections.
All right. Okay, let's feel free to unless it's a very quick one. Yes?
Yeah, it's not a question, but a comment. Yeah. We have here in Guadeloupe, we have barely the same situation with hawksbill turtle, in Marie-Galante. Hawksbill turtle, as you know, is critically endangered, and we use that to change the vision, trying to make people be proud of that and understand that they have a responsibility in front of the rest of the world, because when we go in international symposium, guys are just saying, what? You have 3,000 nests a year of hawksbill. So it's something fishermen or some other people think we have too many turtles now, but finally it's the same situation. They are only stable, but we try to change the thing, making them understand that we have a huge part of the remaining population.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, in a lot of my experience in going into schools and even talking to some adults, many people in the Bahamas who are from the Bahamas have no clue that the Bahamas is a shark sanctuary. And like you said, this is something that you should be proud of, right? Just as you should be proud that you are a hotspot for hawksbill turtles, you should be proud that you're a hotspot for Caribbean reef, among many other species like the oceanic whitetip, which you can rarely find throughout the entire globe's oceans, right? So it's like you said, changing perspectives to feel proud of this measure and not stunned by it and feeling that it's actually a problem.
All right. Well, thank you, audience, for your participation. Thank you to Candice, to Simone. Thank you to Jessica and Eloise, to Alexandra, Lucy, Adara. Maybe next year we need to try and get some gentlemen to present in our session. So thank you all very much. Can I ask for the MPA presenters to come and take a photo? Can we ask for the Our Shared Oceans group to come and take some photos at the front with their slide also? Thank you. There is a bycatch, a meet-up on bycatch, I believe, at the moment, and a cocktail this evening.
And before everyone leaves, just an announcement about the cocktail this evening. It's on the terrace of the, I don't know how you pronounce it, Apice restaurant, which is the one downstairs. So it's below the Deck des Palms. So it's on the outdoor terrace of the main restaurant. So it starts at 7. There will be food and cocktails.